Is the Fantastic Four series really that bad? Yes. Yes it is. But let's take a look at all of them, starting with the first film. Starting off with the story. It's honestly just fine. It doesn't draw too many woos from the crowd, but it's serviceable enough to keep things in motion. But where it gets lost is Doctor Doom's motivation, and to back it up, it comes off almost silly and non-believable, watering everything else down. Doctor Doom was the biggest issue of this film, being an absolute miss by a compilation of things like the acting, the writing he has to work with, his motivation, and overall portrayal of the character. For starters, he's one of the best Marvel villains, but he gets totally disrespected in this film, where he gets almost zero characterization. He just basically hangs out for 3/4 of the film, crying about how investors don't want to buy into his stock. On top of that, he doesn't really come off menacing at all, just floating through his lines and almost seeming like he was there for a check.
Well, you let me know what I can do.
The rest of the cast was the definition of just fine. This group is meant to be the driving force of the film, but they were totally mishandled, where I personally had a tough time believing they're a team because they almost had no chemistry, so it made it hard to root for them as a whole. To me, Ben and Reed were fine, but I don't know if it was due to the writing, but Chris Evans stuck out like a sore thumb. It's not that he was bad, but I believe the way they wrote his character was bad. Speaking of bad, surely the only thing Jessica Alba was there for was eye candy, because she was super underdeveloped as well, and her acting isn't really the greatest at all. That brings me to my next point. I don't necessarily think it was all their fault, because they are a talented bunch for the most part. I believe a lot of it was due to the poor writing. A lot of it was super corny and just on the nose, treating the audience like we were 5 years of age.
To be seen and heard. Look at me.
My next issue was the pacing. This film moved so fast, which could have been a good thing in some aspects, because I don't know if I could have handled a 2+ hour long movie, but it left everything underdeveloped. It left me thinking, how did we even get here, and how does this even make sense? Just for an example, the film treated the audience as if everyone knows the backstory of these characters. Before the 15-minute mark, you've already met all the characters, their motivations, and how they got their powers. Then the cherry on top is they just randomly learn how to use their powers out of nowhere. Make that one make sense. Overall, I can go on for a long time just plugging holes in this film, where it almost came off as hilariously bad at times. But to be fair, there are some good bits to this film, like some parts of the action, some of the one-liners, and even some portions of the acting. But at the end of the day, this is just a poor representation of the Fantastic Four. It gets a 3 out of 10 from me. Light work, no reaction. Now on to the second film. And simply put, Rise of the Silver Surfer was just more of the same stuff from the first film, just turned up a few notches.
Together.
The film had a couple, and I literally mean a couple, good bits when it came to the action, effects, and a few of the one-liners, but this film didn't know what it wanted to be, similar to Spider-Man 3. The film started off promising, I guess, with the Silver Surfer. He didn't really do much besides have a couple cameos and a few scenes, but he did seem like he was going to pose a real threat to the Fantastic Four as the film progressed. But come the last act of the film, he turns good. Then, it switched up to Doctor Doom for about 10 minutes, where the creators missed on him again, seemingly adding him back just because they left the door open on it, making him a very baseline villain and didn't let him fulfill his potential. Then, it shifted to Galactus, who's a bloody cloud. That's right, a damn cloud.
Huh?
Anyways, just like the last film, the writing is extremely bad to where it interfered with nearly everyone's delivery.
Zoom! What's going on? You're on fire! You're on fire!
Also, the film was paced out extremely fast to where nothing was able to breathe or develop. I don't want to waste any more of y'all's time. Overall, this film was just garbage. Best way to sum it up, how can you tell me Alicia Masters can sense Johnny's presence, but can't sense a damn helicopter heading towards her to kill her? Make that one make sense. Whatever, I'm pissed off. 3 out of 10. Let's get into the next one. With Fan Force Stick, well, it's a thing, I guess. During the first act, I was trying to give this film a little more love than it's been getting, attempted to give it a bit of credit for somewhat trying to give us a backstory on our quote-unquote heroes, but it's dreadfully boring.
Oh yeah.
Silver Surfer is a step up from this schlop, and that's saying something. But similar to that film, when we're already an hour in, it still feels like nothing really has happened, with there only being a half hour left or so. And once they do get their powers at that time, the film takes an even worse dive, feeling like they completely switched creative teams, where they were trying to wrap this up as soon as they could.
It's fantastic.
For starters, the story is just all over the place. Things move so fast with no development or much explanation. For example, it doesn't even show you how they learn to use their powers. It just time skips us a year later into the future. The writing isn't god-awful like some bits from the other films, but it is terribly stale and on the nose, with its tons of exposition for nothing to come after this film. There's simply no backbone to this movie. How can you have such a star-studded cast and somehow give them absolutely nothing to work with, where the writing tampers with the deliveries? The characters have absolutely zero chemistry, meaning in such an unconventional way on top of it, where they're all also one note, especially Sue Storm, whose one note was to be a bitch. She had nothing to do, where it seemed like the creators finalized the script, realized they forgot to write her in, and tried to fit her in wherever they could, because she has to be there. It really just puzzles me how they can call this a Fantastic Four film when they didn't spend any time together as a proper power team until the final battle. It feels like they're all acting for themselves instead of for each other. And do not get me started on Doctor Doom, who starts off as a pushy dork, then disappears, then comes back as the villain for the last 15 minutes. Talk about underdeveloped and yet again, misused. Go figure. And my last issue before I blow a gasket was the overall production of the film. The way it was shot, the way it was edited, the god-awful CGI, and the use of the green screens. To me, the film was shot like a TV show, and the effects look like they came out of a bad PS2 game. With all the money involved in this film, and the year it was made, you'd, at the very least, expect it to be passable, but this was just wank. Overall, this film just made me angry to be a fan of these films. It gets a 2 out of 10 for me, averaging out the trilogy to be a 2.6 out of 10. I gotta go cool off. See you guys on the next one.